All right, welcome to Troubadour Reactions. Today I will be reacting to History Summarized, the Punic Wars. Now, I've watched other videos from this production company or this YouTube channel. It's called Overly Sarcastic Productions. I really like them. I don't agree with everything they do, but I really think they do a great job of essentializing a lot of difficult things. Now, sometimes I believe they choose entertainment and sarcasm over what's necessary and the most important thing for a particular, moment of what they're trying to teach. But I mean, overall, they do a really good job. And I love that they're spreading this history and they have millions of viewers that are, or at least millions of subscribers and hundreds of thousands of views on their videos. And, I hope that in some small way I can bring a couple more people to them because they deserve it. And I have not seen this video. This video is called History Summarized Punic Wars. One of the reasons I'm doing this is because I run something called the Literary Canon Club, where we read through the classic works of great literature from Homer to Goethe. And one of the tips that I give people to help you understand classic literature is to get at least some of the context, and that means the history. That really helps when you go back in time. You just need to understand what's going on. We're starting session 2 currently, and so we have 20 members right now. It's paying members. Now we're closed for enrollment, but you can sign up if you're interested. For future open enrollment, go to troubadourmag.com, but we are starting the Virgil as of the recording of this. Okay, so let us watch this. Let me pop this up here. All right, so here is this figure that I like, this drawing guy sitting by his hearth telling stories. That's what this is. He's or educating and teaching. And let's do this.
The three Punic Wars make up possibly one of the most intense chapters in Roman history, so if you want the full story, please check out this video on the Roman Republic. The short of it is that over the centuries, the tiny town of Rome grew and grew until it conquered the entire Italian peninsula. Basically, they leveled up, and Carthage was the next level. The first war can be roughly attributed to a miscommunication with some Sicilian pirates. While Carthage and Rome may have been destined to fight each other at some point or another, they ultimately came to blows on account of both being called into Sicily to settle a fight between the city of Syracuse and some rowdy pirates. Rome and Carthage kind of just tripped face first into war and spent most of the 23-year-long war not actually fighting each other. The issue was Carthage had been a long-standing naval power in the Mediterranean, but Rome had no navy to speak of. So Rome really needed a navy, and quick. This is another of many instances of Rome adapting to situations really well. Say what you will about Rome, they were immensely clever and had a great habit of taking good ideas, methods, technologies, and techniques from other cultures and using them to great effect. In this case,
what we might call today cultural appropriation. But, one of the things to greatness is learning from other people and applying that to the best of your abilities. Now, in times of war, or in case of war, that may seem kind of mean, but it's war. So that's what you do. You learn from the best around and you, use those methods. So while he seems to have a little bit of a, I can't tell if he's negative or positive on that part of Rome. He seems like he's basically positive, but this is something that they did really well. And one of the reasons why they were so great is that they absorbed, and America does this as well. Like if you look at our language, if you look at the things we've done in the past, we do take the best of other cultures and, absorb them into our culture. And that's one of the features of American culture. It's one of the features of Roman culture. And that's good. They, just as a side example, they had a history of all these gods, Jupiter and Juno and so on. And they didn't have the best artistry, especially literary art. So they borrowed the stories of some neighbors of theirs named the Greeks. And so many of the stories, although they, both the Greeks and the Romans or of the tribes in Italy, they both had their own version of a sky god. And so the Greeks called him Zeus. The Romans or the Italian tribes called him Jove. They're similar. But the stories that the Greeks told, the Romans realized that these were great stories, so they just absorbed them. And many of the stories of Apollo, Juno, Hera, so on and so forth. So the point is that that's a good thing, to learn from people, to improve, to build, to progress. And I think this guy is actually saying that it is good, or at least it's a fact of reality, that's for sure, that they did do that.
The Romans found a few beached and sunk Carthaginian triremes and quinquiremes and proceeded to reverse engineer an entire fleet of ships. Just casually, as you do. Rome's first aquatic outings weren't all that fruitful, but at battles like Cape Icnomus, which is arguably one of the biggest naval battles in history, Rome pulled out wins. Ultimately, Rome won the war, claiming Sicily for itself and forcing heavy reparations on Carthage. They also decided to take Corsica and Sardinia because, screw you Carthage, these are mine now. In the decades following, the Carthaginians, led by the general Hamilcar Barca, colonized the seaside coast of Spain, largely for the purposes of mining silver to pay their Roman reparations. Little did Rome know, Hamilcar, his son Hannibal, and the other Carthaginians in Spain were furious over losing Sicily, Corsica, and Sardinia, and had been casually scheming to completely destroy Rome for almost 2 whole decades. In 219 BC, Hannibal sacked the Roman allied Saguntum in Spain, and Rome, defensively of course, declared war. Hannibal, the madman, proceeded to rather famously Leroy Jenkins his way across the goddamn Alps with over 40,000 soldiers and 37 elephants. Elephants! And while elephants aren't particularly scary to us, if you're an ancient Roman who's never seen an elephant before, that thing is a 4-legged giant with 2 spears and a snake coming out of its face. Bottom line, they're monsters. The Romans thought they were monsters. Granted, most of Hannibal's elephants died while crossing the Alps, perhaps unsurprisingly, but it doesn't take a lot of elephants to have a scary amount of elephant on the battlefield. I genuinely can't convey how viscerally terrifying the mere mention of Hannibal's name would have been to a Roman.
Yeah.
Now, to change the topic away from the Carthaginian boogeyman, since we're talking about Roman military history here, I'll refer you to my video on classical warfare for some context. It mostly talks about hoplite warfare, but I cover the classic Roman Republican army in the later portion. Although, as it turns out, the Roman army that conquered the Italian peninsula was basically a hoplite army, so honestly the whole video is probably relevant to Roman history. Anyway, after arriving in Italy, Hannibal demonstrated his tactical brilliance by immediately winning 2 battles in northern Italy through guerrilla and ambush tactics. Hannibal and his armies would proceed to stay in Italy, effectively behind enemy lines with next to no means of supply or reinforcement, for 16 years. The Carthaginians went up and down the peninsula, setting fire to farms left and right, hoping above all else for Rome to simply surrender. 2 years into the campaign, Hannibal said, "Alright, screw this, I'm gonna destroy the entire Roman army," and proceeded to make plans for his next battle, at the Roman supply depot at Cannae in southern Italy. At the battle, the Carthaginians advanced in a U-shape, with 40,000 infantry forming the front line and 10,000 cavalry on the wings. The Romans, however, had almost twice as big an army, so they felt pretty good about their chances. The armies met, and as the fighting progressed, the center of the Carthaginian line fell back, and the Romans pushed forward, hoping to break the retreating line. Except, at that moment when they all rushed in, the Carthaginians' African infantry and famed Numidian cavalry advanced on the flanks and effectively enveloped the whole Roman army. From there, it was a bloodbath. Estimates are all over the place, but the gist is that most of the 80,000 strong Roman army was killed outright and the rest were imprisoned. The slaughter went on until nightfall, and in one version of the story I've heard, the Carthaginians only started taking prisoners because their arms got tired from all the killing. It was the single greatest defeat that Rome ever suffered in its history, and Hannibal hoped that a shattered and dismayed Rome, having lost 16 legions and the entire south of Italy, would surrender at once. Rome's response was simply, "See you next year," and it spent the entire winter raising more armies to go out the following summer. For the next several years, the Roman army pursued the strategy of just bother him and shadowed Hannibal around the Italian countryside. He was still being annoying, but he wasn't a direct threat to the city of Rome, so good enough for now. But jumping
now.
back, can we take a second to appreciate the sheer quintessential Roman badassery it takes to hear that you lost at least 50,000 soldiers and then turn around and tell the guy who killed them to shove it and wait for round 2? Because holy crap, that takes some serious coleones. Serious and massively suicidal coleones. And speaking of, in 211, the young Publius Cornelius Scipio took up a generalship for the Spanish campaign, which was widely
Scipio!
considered to be a suicide mission. To the surprise of basically everyone, he spent the next 5 years successfully de-Carthagifying Spain to great effect. Following his campaign, he hatched a brilliant plan to take the fight back to Carthage. The Senate, thinking this was another suicide mission, told him he could do it, but they wouldn't finance his armies. So Scipio raised a couple legions in Italy and Sicily and hopped over to North Africa. Now, while Hannibal is absolutely a brilliant general in that he did impossibly crazy stuff like crossing the Alps, campaigning in Italy for 16 years, and wiping out an entire Roman army, Scipio's brilliance came from his quintessentially Roman ability to adopt and adapt. The Romans, above all else, knew a good idea when they saw one, and they almost never made the same mistake twice. Scipio studied Cannae, and he knew what he had to do to defeat Carthage. Since the Numidian cavalry was critical to the Carthaginian army, Scipio played into a Numidian civil war to get some of their cavalry for himself. In doing so, he had massively weakened Carthage on their own soil, and had nearly orchestrated their surrender when, oh snap, Hannibal's back! And on that day, history nerds from all around the world and across time busted out the popcorn because this is gonna be good. The night before the impending Battle of Zama, Hannibal and Scipio actually, supposedly, had a meeting. It's detailed in Livy's History of Rome, Book 30, Chapters 30 and 31. There's a link in the description. It takes 5 minutes. Just read it, okay? For me. Read it. It's incredible. First, they're simply in awe of each other. Then, Hannibal waxes philosophical about fortune, gives Scipio life advice, and asks for peace. Scipio responded, well, I was going to make peace, but then you brought an army here. I can't just leave now. Look, Hannibal, I respect you. I really do, and you're leaving me no choice here, man. I've just got to kick your ass, dude. I'm sorry, there's no other way. I have to kick your ass. And on the following day, some asses were certainly kicked. At the Battle of Zama, Scipio's Numidian cavalry put the Carthaginian cavalry to flight, and fighting between the infantry lines was actually very close until the Roman cavalry returned from behind the Carthaginian line to ultimately win the day. It was a hard-fought and super tense battle, but with that, the Second Punic War was won. Half a century and a lot of
So there's stuff he's missing that I really that I think is very important. There's a book I recommend, Nothing Less Than Victory, 7 Battles in History. And it's it talks about the Punic Wars, their background, the context, and particularly the Second Punic War, because one of the things that people don't seem to understand is the unnecessary, the fact that the Third Punic War was not necessary, that the Second Punic War was justified in many ways on the Roman side. They were justified in going to war. And that strategically, philosophically, what was required to finally win the war and thus make it so there were no other wars afterwards, or there would not have needed to be other wars. And we'll see what he says about the Third Punic War, is the fact that the people of Carthage saw that they were defeated. And this is one of the great lessons that there are military strategists in history who have talked about this, but in modern times, we have forgotten this since World War II, that in order to defeat a society, you cannot simply defeat their armies away from the core. That was what Hannibal knew he had to do. He had to go to Rome and defeat the Roman people. That's what he had to do, but he wasn't able to accomplish that. That's why he lost, because Scipio realized that the Carthaginians have to learn and see with their own eyes a Roman army right there and say, you are finished, you are conquered. They needed to see this with their own eyes. And that's what happened in the Second Punic War. And that's a very important part of this story that most historians seem to gloss over, but it's really important because defeating an enemy is not merely an issue of defeating their army. As we saw in this video, You killed 50,000 of their men. You defeated an 80,000, army, an 80,000 member army, and they still didn't stop because you didn't touch Rome. And that's what it comes down to. There's this idea today, and this is a universal lesson. This is not something that applied in ancient times or applied in medieval times or applied during the Renaissance or applied during World War II and doesn't apply. It is a universal truth. To defeat an enemy, they need to believe that that their strategy, their philosophy, their cultural milieu and progress that they have a vision for is wrong, and it's going to lead to their death. That's what the people need to believe. So the Carthaginians had to believe that their conquering, perspective on the Mediterranean, that their forward-moving progress of what they believed they wanted to be the hegemony in that region, that was not going to happen, that Rome was going to do it. And in modern times, we needed to show the Nazis and the Japanese, the empire of Japan, which was a religious empire, that their strategy of world domination was wrong. And it was not going, but it wasn't, we had to convince not only the people, we had to convince the people and the high up, emperors around, or the people around the emperor to stop. And that's why we had to drop a couple nuclear weapons. But the point is that this freaking truth is a truth that is a truth, capital T, forever, based on empirical facts, based on inductive thinking, based on the facts of reality. And it is a fact that we have forgotten. And this guy here seems to have forgotten it. It is a big deal. And it's why we lost, quote unquote, the Afghanistan war. It's why we will always lose wars against pipsqueak countries if we don't learn that the people need to lose the will to pursue their views of conquering the world, because that's what happened in the Middle East. Middle East has this view of, Allah taking over, Islam taking over the world, because, you have these evil people on the other side of the country, all over the world, including in their own region with Israel and so on. These types of things happen all the time. We can go on and on forever. I would really recommend reading Nothing Less Than Victory, but there's a lot of books, Winning the Unwinnable War, a lot of great work on this topic. It's not a new truth. This is a universal, abstract, forever, archetypical, whatever you want to put it. This is a truth. When we don't understand this truth, we lose. When we understand the truth, we win. And there's no more fighting afterwards. So that's another thing that people don't realize, that after the Second Carthaginian War, there was peace. The Third Punic War was a travesty, was horrific by the Romans, not necessary. And we'll see what he says about that. I apologize for my long rant, but here we go.
Cato the Elder ending all of his speeches with Carthago delenda est later, Rome returns to raze Carthage to the ground, to rub more salt in the...
Okay, so that's all he says about it. Yeah, so that's part of it, is it basically became a political campaign, and they, slaughtered everybody and salted the earth, which was completely unnecessary, not needed. They probably could have even conquered it without doing this. This was just political.
The wound, the Romans also literally rubbed salt in the earth to make sure the Carthaginians would never rise again. Wow. Okay, so there's regular bitter, there's Taylor Swift writes a song about you bitter, and then there's Rome hates you so much they wipe you off the face of the earth forever bitter.
Yeah,
Moral of the story is Rome does not screw around. So
but it was
don't
ancient times.
Screw with Rome.
Yep.
And that's the Punic Wars.
Yep.
If you'd like to see where the rest of the story goes, give this video a click in the description and hop back to the Roman Republic.
Video.
And remember,
Carthago
delenda est.
Carthago delenda est. Rome must go, or Carthage must be destroyed. All right. Oh, DJ Kirkwood. So this is how many people it takes to make a great video such as this. I'm going to let it run because they did a great job. Follow them on Twitter, buy their stuff, do their things that they ask you to do because they are worthwhile. All right, so that's all I got for you today. I Won't go into a long rigmarole at the end because I've already done a long rigmarole in the middle. I hope you found this interesting. Watch more of History Summarized. Watch more Overly Sarcastic Productions. More importantly, go read more of this work. Go read more great art. Don't be afraid of it. It will make you a better person. And yes, I mean capital B, better. You're better than people who don't read it. Yes, elitism is good. Go do this stuff. Be better. Go to the gym. Work out your body. Work out your mind. Be a better human.